Quick thing before we get started. If you disappeared from your agency for 30 days, no calls, no emails, no Slack, would it survive? Would it thrive? Would it decline? If you hesitated, I get it. I spent 12 years building my agency, and for the most part of that, I was actually the ceiling. Every decision, every client, every fire, all me. I wrote a book about what actually needed to change. It's called Operator to Owner, and it lays out the 5 identity shifts every founder has to make to stop being that bottleneck. So go to operatortoownerevolution.com. That's operatortoownerevolution.com and grab your copy. You're listening to the Smart Agency Masterclass with me, Jason Swank, and we're bringing you this episode courtesy of our friends at Wix Studio. Let's go ahead and get into the show. Hey, Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Glad we finally worked out the technical issues, but tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Andy Janaitis, founder of PPC Pitbulls. We're a boutique digital marketing firm. We focus on Google ads and meta ads for small to medium businesses. And our real differentiator, how we help our clients succeed, is by making sure that we're measuring every single ad dollar that goes into the system. We understand what's happening once the customers hit your site, and then using that to optimize and get better from there.
Very cool. And how did you get started?
So I started my career, I came out of school as an industrial engineer. I was in data science and then software engineering, eventually product management. But throughout the whole phase, I was always working for an agency. So I also had the entrepreneurial bug and wanted to start my own thing, and kind of always knew it would have to be an agency, because that's the life I knew and kind of how I had gotten my start. So me and a former colleague, we took the jump. He said, hey, you want to come help with the technical side of, Google and meta ads. And we took the jump, started an agency right before, this is 2020. So it was right before COVID hit, and right before my son was born, my first child. And we've been off to the races ever since then.
Very cool. And I know you've started kind of creating your, agency brain, and what I've been, we had our event 2 weeks ago now. And, my whole thing there was, as agency owners, we need to really embrace AI and be efficient and really create a layer where it supports your team, as well as creates some of the decisions that AI or your team can actually do. And I know you're messing with Claude right now. So tell us a little bit more what you're doing with that.
Yeah. So, like probably most agency owners, back about a year or two ago, we started to say, hey, we're going to fall behind if we don't keep up with this, this AI thing. So we got everybody on the team a seat in Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini. And we said, okay, we're going to figure out which one works best, and using it mainly for, the standard stuff, queries kind of similar to how you would use a Google search, but getting a little fuller result back. But then about 6 weeks ago, we really jumped off and we said, okay, let's, take this to the next level, start making this a tool we can actually use. And we built what I'd like to kind of describe as a context engine. So essentially, we've hooked into our Fireflies meeting recordings. We've hooked into our email. We've hooked into Slack, really any touch point we have with a client or internally. And we're taking all of that information and dropping it into context files. So the first step was just figuring out how to parse all that information properly, so that when something comes up, when a client has an issue, when we're in the middle of a process, we can kind of just ask Claude and it all just works. It understands our brand voice. It understands our general SOWs as an agency. It understands all the different contexts from the clients we work with, and kind of helps to guide the team in a direction. So I really think of it as, I don't know if I'm sure most of the agency owners listening to this have the same experience, where you hear for years, you got to SOW, you got to systematize everything. And for, been in this business for 5 years now, 6 years, I think. At every turn, we've always tried different things, whether it be, documents, whether it be, we're in ClickUp, so dropping all the different SOWs into ClickUp, and invariably they never got followed, right? So this is the first time that we're really able to take all of that context, plus, it's kind of constantly learning new context. And I almost think of it as like enforcing our SOW. So if we want something to be done a certain way, we just add that into the, general skill memory. And then the next time it happens, it's just going to happen the way that we'd like it to. So it's been really, really helpful for that.
Yeah. For a while now, and I think most people just use AI as a chat and they just ask it a question. And, one of the things that we've really been building over the past couple of months is this AI operating system, right? Because look, everyone has the same tools. We all do, but we don't have the same data. That's what makes us unique. And so what I started doing, as I was building this operating system, I was like, how do I put all this context in, like you were saying? So like I have over 1,000 videos. I have 950 interviews that we've done on the podcast. I have all this content, all this stuff, these frameworks, books. And I was trying to load it up all in the context, but then it would overwhelm the system. And like, I'd be out of tokens or memory or however you want to, do it. And so I was like, man, I got to build something where I give it a decision layer for what different things to pull. So when it goes to the wiki for the podcast or the YouTube channel videos that we've done, it looks at a high level version. And then if like I ask specific questions, it will go deep. I have it as I've trained it where if I said, we all have that issue where AI will go, it'll tell you something and damn straight. Like that ain't right.
Yeah.
And then you call it on it and it's like, oh yeah, gotcha. Like I was
exactly.
Playing,
yep.
You're right. So it logs, it trains. And the cool part, I think we were talking kind of before, is it's all local. So when Claude was kind of farting around and fucking me up last week, I was like, well, screw you, Claude. I'm going to use Gemini. Rolled right into Gemini. And then when I burned through tokens on that, and I heard about Codex, whatever it's fucking called, rolled right to that. I was up and running again. Like, it's pretty amazing. Like, if you just as you build this living thing, it feels like.
Yeah. And that's all the different platforms are pretty powerful. Like you mentioned, like you can kind of switch one in, switch the other in, but having that good context store. And for us, one of the big challenges was getting that to a shared level too, right? So everything lives locally, but then figuring out how we could auto sync that to Google Drive so that at any given time,
how do you sync it to Drive? What do you
So it's all just basically lives, it's kind of a two-tiered structure. So our central bank of client context and all the skills that we have and, just general rules as an agency, that just lives in a shared Google Drive folder, which everybody has automatically syncing to your desktop at all given times. And then separately, there's a personal context layer. So if I say, hey, when you're parsing my inbox, I'm going to put in a very specific rule to handle, messages that I get from my kid's school or something that doesn't really apply to anybody else. And that gets saved off into a personal context store. And then we've just written the rules in such a way that it pulls from both of those in a smart way and saves everything where it needs to be saved. So we have both.
How do you know it doesn't get overwritten if it's constantly syncing with everybody?
Yeah. So we're generally a small team. So, we don't have a ton of concern, as long as everybody's kind of making smart decisions. We're still pretty early on. So like realistically, there are probably some different file permission changes that we should make over time. But in the short run, one big thing we've done is that everything has an owner. So every client, obviously the account manager would be the owner for that stage. And then for, most of our central skills files, I'm the owner for those. And basically anybody can make changes to those, but if they go to make changes, it will prompt them and say, hey, someone else owns this. Are you sure you want to make that change? If not, you can put it into a separate queue. And then the next time I come on, it'll say, hey, one of my employees queued up a change because they think that the inbox management will run better if we do this. Do you approve it or not? And then it goes into the main store.
Yeah. Yeah. How I started doing it was I think a good starting point, and this is what I did because it allowed me to just kind of start, because as I talk to agency owners, they don't know where to start because we're so ADD. Yeah. and we'll go down one rabbit hole. Oh, Jason said to do this. Boom. And then he gets distracted doing something else. And then, it's all across the board. And I'm constantly that way. So I'd be curious, where do you think, if you could go back to do this, where would you start? And then I'll tell you where I would start too.
Yeah. So the big thing is, there's a few answers. And the short answer is I kind of short circuited it a little bit, that I'm in another agency community. I don't know if you've ever met with Chris Dubois at some point, but he had basically a workshop that's, hey, in an hour, we're going to start a general structure. And basically what it was just a rules file that was, no more than a page or something, that basically just said, hey, here's the context files I'm going to give you, and here's how to think about them. And then you can just keep adding things on. And then it came with just a very basic folder structure that had, skills with, one or two skills files under it. Everything is just text files and markdown. And then clients, and then had, one or two client directories under it. But the idea is, the beauty of working with a Claude is you can kind of describe what your end goal is and where you're trying to get to, and it'll design a whole plan for you. So, for us, we're heavily Claude based. You mentioned all the different platforms you could be using. I would say, as a starting point for everybody, if you want to say, hey, I want to start, pick one very specific thing you want to do and say, hey, I want to start, getting client context out of my Fireflies transcript. So you're already recording client calls, and you want to pull those down. Just open up Claude, open up the desktop version, so it's pulling from your local files. Go to Claude Code and just say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the tool that I'm trying to pull the context from, and I'd like to save it in a file structure that's organized so that it's easy to find, context from individual clients. And just with that, it'll bring up a plan for you. You can approve and say, hey, change this, keep that, go ahead and run with it. And it'll build a framework. You just need that initial harness. And then from there, everything is just tweaks and changes over time that, okay, now here's a new feature I want to add. Here's a new feature I want to add.
Look, your agency adapts for every client, right? Your builder should do the same. That's why Wix Studio is built for the way you actually create. AI-powered site mapping lets you get straight down to the design. Whether you shape things in Figma or start in Studio, your vision's coming to life quicker with no-code animations and built-in responsiveness. And for client growth that actually scale, you've got extendable business solutions and a dynamic CMS. Scale your agency at wixstudio.com.
Yeah. My mistake I made when I was building the operating system in the beginning was I created this huge, long Google Drive document. And I loaded it up with everything. So it was almost like every time I asked AI a question, it had to go through everything. Like it was literally everyone in my company, come to a meeting. I want to see if I can change this one letter in this one line of text. And everyone has to say yes in order to do it. And so I thought that was an operating system. I was like, no. It was more of what I call a briefing document, right? To go through, here's our ICP, here's who we don't, here's what we stand for, here's what we stand against, here's our branding guidelines. And then, like you said, building that infrastructure, that file structure for here's some of the designs we like, here's some of the marketing we like, here's marketing that we've used, here's our wikis, here's our podcasts, here's our YouTube, here's our transcripts, all these different things. But then we have routing throughout it, so it doesn't load everything. And it's really efficient. And, I've been able to spin up sites in like a half hour that I would charge so much for because it was so easy, or I can go do different tasks. And like you were saying, most people give it a task to do. I try to remind myself, because sometimes I forget, give it an outcome and let it work backwards. And that's the real secret sauce. And I think it's just a new way of working to, right? Like when I started in 99, there was no web designers or webmasters or web developers, right? And that's the same thing that's happening now. And I think I was saying on another podcast, I think a lot of people are freaked out because they haven't understood it. They haven't rolled up their sleeves and they think they can hire someone to go do it for them, where it's almost like telling people, go on the internet when the internet came out, go browse for me and tell me, go do my stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, roll up your sleeves, just get into it. And then the real secret sauce is not for you just to do it and create these agents, but to show your team how to do that. And then they create agents and then just start spreading. It's really pretty cool to watch my team build these kind of things.
Exactly. And it's really the thing, you've got to be experiencing it in order to start working. So that's the biggest piece of advice for anybody is like, just get started and start messing with it and you'll slowly get better over time. But similarly for your team, a lot of the value you're going to get out of it, certainly we haven't seen all of the value you're going to get out of it yet, but a lot of it's going to be months or years before you really start to like dial it all in. But you'll never be at that point if you don't get started today, kind of thing.
Well, it's like everything. It's just, if you wait for it to be perfect, you'll never do it.
Yeah.
I'm constantly changing it. It's annoying the hell out of my team.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, check out what I did. And then when they ignore me, I go to my wife, hey, check out what I did. And then she ignores me. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, who wants to see my really cool thing I built?
Over and over again. Yeah. And I think there's a really important piece there too. And this is why that operating system or just some context layer where you're saving information between sessions is really important. Because when I talk to, especially like non-technical people, it's amazing. I feel like we've been at this for a year or so and it feels like, oh, this is all old hat. Everybody's using this stuff. And then I talk to, my brother is a lawyer and he says, hey, we got to get started with it. Like he's just starting to play with some of the stuff and you're really feeling the, existential pinch that there are. It's important that we're staying ahead of this stuff because your competitors certainly are going to be staying ahead of it. But as he's getting in, he says, okay, well, I had it write a contract for me and look at these really stupid mistakes it made. And if he was to just, keep going to the interface and keep prompting it, you can make your prompts a little bit better over time, but you'd probably still see a lot of those stupid mistakes over and over and over again. So I think the best thing you can do to get started is to write that context layer that saves off rules, saves off, the way that you want things done over time, because then you're not only improving in your own skills, but you can also be improving in, the prompts you're writing. Everything is just kind of slowly improving over time versus, seeing a mistake it made, spending a whole session fixing that mistake by prompting it over and over again, and then just waiting. And 2 weeks later, you come in for a new document, a new sales proposal or whatever, and you still have to fix all those same problems that you fixed the first time versus saving those rules off so that now your sales proposals just work every time you come back.
Well, and I understand the frustration people have when they use it and they don't give it the right context and they get crappy result or the AI slop. They're like, oh, this sucks. Like, yeah, it sucks, but you would get the same result if you hired someone and gave it very little context and you said, go do it. Well, that's going to suck. And that might be that actually might be the whole agency's issue if they're struggling because they just expect, right? I think even going back to when I first started hiring people for roles that I've never experienced, I'd be like, oh, you suck, because I didn't have a system in place. I didn't give them the outcome I wanted. I just said, go do this task or try to go figure it out. Like, you're supposed to be the expert on this. And I was like, look back, I was like, man, that was a bad move. And I think people are doing that with AI right now, including your team. And there's going to be some people that adapt faster than others. The ones that don't adapt, they're going to be extinct. Hesitation will kill their job, not AI.
Exactly. Yeah. And there is a pretty low barrier to entry. Like we were saying, like you can literally, if you're not sure how to do something, you can literally ask the tool how to do it and it'll start to help you figure out, hey, I need to find a way that every time you make this mistake, we don't make the same mistake next week. And if you ask it that question, it will write you a whole plan and help you figure out how exactly you're going to get that done.
Yeah. And just remember, everybody, AI is the worst it will ever be at this moment.
Exactly.
It gets better.
I always think you always hear like the Gartner hype cycle. It's amazing how each new technology comes out and these are lessons we've learned over and over again, but people always forget. You kind of have this like, hey, new capability comes out. Like we're all so excited, this, peak of inflated expectations. And then we start to see some of the limitations and get really disillusioned with how it works. And then eventually it's like, yeah, it didn't fulfill all the promise that we thought it might have at the very beginning, but realistically, it's making us a lot more, productive if we're able to work around some of the limitations and use it in the right way. But yeah, it's funny. It's like you see that with every single software, every new tool that comes out, and AI is no different. But when things, 2-3 years ago when ChatGPT first hit public, and you can almost immediately, people are like, oh man, every job in the world is going away. Like this is gonna take over everything. Like when you always map it back to that Gartner hype cycle idea, like I feel like that's it's pretty easy to see where that hype comes in. And as you're listening to different podcasts and things, I think, it always comes up the same.
Well, I think it's because the people that are freaking out are the ones that are trying to protect something that they've built versus a lot of times I'm like, screw it. I'll risk everything.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'll blow it up. I'll figure it out. When the internet came out and I created my agency, like I didn't even have that fear because I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And then even as I was building, I was like, fuck it. I'll just keep building. Like, young Jason is not going to take me out. And I'm still that way. I'm like, but there's a lot of people that are like, no, we've always done it this way. We're going to keep doing it. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah. You've got to be open. I mean, that's the whole reason we're entrepreneurs, right? Like if you're going to just keep doing everything the same way and take the safer path, then what's the point in starting an agency?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Andy, thanks so much for coming on and sharing this. And for everyone listening, I'm getting 25 people together in Austin, Texas in November. And it's going to be a live workshop where we're going to be building these AIs. Think of hackathon, but for AI with 25 agency owners. If you guys go to forgeyouragencyahead.ai, we just came up with that today. You can check it out. So it's forgeyouragencyahead.ai. Go check it out. And until next time, have a swank day.